Okay, everyone, as you can see, this is the None of Our Businesses Roundtable recording from our homes again amidst everyone self quarantining, so to speak, staying at home. Now, I don't want to use that word wrong. None of us have tested positive. Everybody on our team is safe and happy so far, and but yeah, we're staying home to be safe, and we are still coming to you to talk about the current events in accounting and finance and business from an accountant's point of view. So we'll take it away with some articles. Who wants to give us a start here today?
I've got an article from CNBC, which I can actually pop on the screen here. So basically, it's an article discussing, current events right now is very much driven by the coronavirus, of course. And so an article talking about how jobless claims have soared past 3 million to a record high. And so I wanted to show this graphic just to kind of put it in perspective, because it's not one of those numbers that you keep at the forefront of like how many unemployment claims are. But obviously this virus has kept everybody at home, which has eliminated a bunch of different jobs. And we're seeing that as those agencies that are trying to keep up with everything are, not able to. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of use this article as a platform to kind of get you guys' opinion on the changes that are taking place in the market right now. And yeah, anything that we can think to say to be helpful here.
Yeah, I was surprised it was this many. I thought maybe that it was, I guess because the virus is so new, I thought maybe that it would be less or we would see more in the coming weeks. But to see that like 3 million or 1.7 just in the last week, but 3 million overall in the last 3 weeks that had to file for unemployment is shocking to say the least, but understandable given that, well, even here in Oregon, we have a shelter-in-place order, and I think throughout most of the country, especially on the coast, everybody's kind of sheltered in place. So whether those unemployment claims remain temporary or if they're, going to skyrocket again or remain chronically unemployed, I think is yet to be seen. But I was surprised at the raw number of it. And I'm just wondering, at what point, does that turn into another great recession? I don't know. It's worrisome.
Yeah, it definitely seems like all the signs are pointing in that direction as you look at all the hard data now. And so it's hard to feel positive about it. But yeah, I think it's it's obviously terrible to those that it's happening to, but it's a good thing that people are willing to, that everyone is doing their part to help stop the spread of the virus. And so you can look at it as a terrible thing, and it is. But yeah, I'm trying to see the bright side of this not very good situation.
So the thing that I've wondered about this is, the thing that I've wondered about this data and everything is, if everybody who's staying home is people who've been deemed not to have kind of essential jobs, or people who otherwise can do their work remotely, right? So the only ones who are allowed to go into work are people who are in essential, there's something deemed by whatever jurisdiction they're in to be essential jobs that can't just be done from home. So it makes me wonder, like, this kind of a side question, or just an academic question, of course, is, well, had this happened 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, would the number of non-essential jobs where people who maybe can't necessarily work from home, but their work is not considered essential, so they're just sent home, their offices or their workplaces closed, their facilities closed, and they just have to go home because their work is not deemed to be, and their jobs aren't considered to be essential jobs. Has the number of people working in these so-called non-essential jobs increased over time? Like, do we have a lot more people now as a percentage of the overall economy that are working in non-essential jobs than were working in non-essential jobs, say, 50 years ago? Yeah, don't know the answer, but I just thought that would be an interesting question about this point. And then it kind of leads to the question that you were asking, AJ, about, well, does this become systematic unemployment, and where does this go? Because it's like, well, if people basically are losing jobs that are not necessarily essential, do we just go back to doing the same non-essential work after this blows over, or do we go back to doing some other kind of non-essential work after this blows over?
Well, I think it all depends too on what you're considering essential workers. I don't necessarily know 40 years ago they would have considered like the food industry to be an essential worker, but right now they consider like fast food drive-throughs are still open, and I think we've seen a big shift in the economy towards like I forget the year, but in the 2000s Texas was bolstering like large unemployment numbers and jobs being available, but when you look closer at those numbers, it was all due to like entry level or food level service kind of jobs. And more recently, there was an article put out that said that more than half Americans eat out for the majority of their meals. And so I think we've seen a shift probably in the last like for sure 100 years, but definitely in the last like 50 years to, I guess, a different kind of essential worker. Like I don't think people would have thought fast food and food workers and that kind of job or those kind of businesses being essential before, but now they're really considered essential. I think in this crisis, food workers are continuing to show up and provide meals to people. For that, grocery stores being the other part. I think a lot of people, even my mom's generation, she's in her 70s, but in the 40s and 50s and 60s, you still raise part of your home cooking at home. She had chickens and stuff like that. Of course, we live in Portland. Everybody has chickens in Portland, and I think to a certain degree, Ty, you're a gardener. Like people do grow their own food, but for the most part in America, I think, especially like in large metropolitan areas, people are shying away from that, and that's really considered an essential job now and probably wouldn't have been counted 50 years ago.
Yeah, and I think, with regard to gardening, I garden for aesthetics. I do grow vegetables and things like that, but I certainly don't grow at scale enough to even feed myself. So yeah, we're not, nothing like subsistence farming. We're definitely not. I definitely don't have the skill set or the putting in the work to be growing at that level. And I would say I would expect that's true with most people that do any kind of gardening around the city. That's probably the case. So yeah, the food system is different now than it was then. So that's a very specific perspective on this point about not just is the total number of essential workers versus non-essential workers, has that changed over the last 50 to 100 years, but also what we consider to be essential, non-essential. To your point, yeah, the food supply system is different now than it was 50 to 100 years ago, for sure.
Yeah, and there's kind of a third metric to that. So it's kind of like what's changed between, what was considered essential back then versus what's considered essential today. And then what's considered essential like really today with all these new developments. Because for example, like the toilet paper industry wasn't probably ever considered to be an essential industry. But now with all of these changes, that's definitely something that has had a lot of strain put on it. But on the topic of just like gardening, I think that'll be another good example of something that's going to change in the near future. Is that I'm right now kind of kicking myself for not having a garden that can provide the kind of enough vegetables to feed my family, because that would be a good thing to have right now.
It's going to be popular again, right? Like the victory gardens during World War II, and it had a little bit of a resurgence in terms of popularity, I think, during our last recession a little bit too. You saw more people like getting really interested in gardening, and I think gardening's near and dear to my heart. I've thought about different kinds of gardening related businesses that would be fun that I might run someday. So yeah, this might be the time to think about that in more seriously.
Well, I think also to note too, and one of the things that we've seen that's really good that's come out of this is seeing like agile businesses pivot. We've heard of like, liquor distributors changing their model and selling like hand sanitizer supplies. We've seen like the auto industry get into making ventilators. So I think it speaks to, a bright spot to this story might be the economic engine that drives America probably is still that small business and that entrepreneurial sense, and being agile enough to pivot. You know, like an automaker or Dyson, for instance, have both switched to making ventilators now, and then, like I mentioned, the spirit industry, and then you see on the news the fashion designers making masks for first responders and such. So there is some opportunity, I think, in the market, and I think that the value that those people add to their brand, being able to keep their employees employed, and then also the value delivered to the American people during a time of crisis, is probably very bolsterous. So it's interesting, and I don't know that you would have had that kind of agility 50 years ago, to your point, Ty, to pivot that quickly and change from being a muffler manufacturer to a ventilator manufacturer, you know?
You know, that's a good question. I mean, we do have data on this in the sense that they did do this in terms of having companies in industry switch to making important parts toward the war effort, right? So during World War II, they did use the War Powers Act or whatever that is to basically enlist corporate America to build things that were needed for the war effort, and they did repurpose businesses that way, and they had to very quickly because, and you know, as you all know, the story went, Pearl Harbor was bombed, and then we were declaring war very quickly at that point, and so they had to mobilize industry very quickly on that. So yeah, it is interesting to consider the juxtaposition of your point of, you would think with technological advancement, we might have the ability, and just the sheer breadth of different kinds of things that exist today versus 50 to 100 years ago, we would have the ability to pivot much faster than was pivoted back then. But actually, because of politics and culture and things like that, we haven't pivoted as quickly just because there wasn't enough effort to do so, it seems like.
Yeah, and a lot of the pivoting we've seen has been not so much pivoting in what they're providing, but just how they're doing it. So everybody's pivoting to work from home, and everybody's, you know, pivoting in their own little way and trying to retain as much of the staff as they can, rather than changing who their customer is, or, you know, how they provide their service.
So I thought, after such a heady discussion, I thought maybe we should show a little bit lighter side. And this is kind of the article I picked for my first one here is kind of a lighter-hearted one, but it's kind of what can go wrong when you're live streaming here. So this is a Critical Role. They're like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of role-playing live stream, but they were doing their first like remote from home kind of live stream event, and forgot to open the flue in the fireplace that they lit the nice fire in to have their fireside chat on, and smoke started billowing out of the fireplace and caused a smoke alarm to go off in the house. And so they had to shut down the live stream and start it all over again. So I thought it was kind of, with everybody working remotely now, I thought it was kind of a funny aside. And I was wondering if anybody had any funny live, like call, kind of conference call or video call experiences that kind of went awry. Or just as a heads up to everybody out there, don't try to be too cute on your video conference calls. We all messed around before this and tried to have awesome backgrounds for us. Didn't quite work. I couldn't be on the bow of the Queen Mary, but I thought it was kind of a lighthearted thing, and just kind of even when you're as technically versed as like these guys that live stream all the time on Twitch, you know, kind of changing venues, changing rules, and changing like how your delivery system can really throw a monkey wrench in everything you're doing. So I thought it was interesting, and I'd kind of like to get your guys' opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, you would think a bunch of, you know, role play aficionados, we'll say, would be prepared for such a dungeonous, you know, event like this. I would have expected somebody to be casting spells and, you know, sort of have the water ready. I think, yeah, I'm not sure where that fell apart.
I don't know where to go from there. I think, yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, I guess the problem that I guess I'm not worried about something in my house falling apart while I'm while I'm on a video conference. But I do think about, well, the whole country now is like sitting at home doing video conferences and using the internet. And I mean, we must be using the internet at a level from home that we don't normally. And so you wonder, will that infrastructure hold up? I mean, are the internet companies really prepared for that? They seem to be. It seems to be working. So, but yeah, I think that seems like the next shoe to drop is, oh, we're all counting on the internet to be connected to each other and not go crazy without any kind of human connection. And then all of a sudden there's an internet blackout. That's kind of the next shoe to drop on this.
It's funny you say that, because there was an article or some kind of statement made by one of the I forget which cable company it was, but they were warning against all these people at home streaming, like playing live video games, and they were saying that that was really going to put a strain on their infrastructure, so they needed to limit the time that they were playing video games, and that gamers were going to be the reason why their infrastructure crashed due to like the increase in video chat and everything else that goes along with it. And they were not very nicely telling gamers to jump off of their online games because it was strangling their bandwidth. So it's interesting to see if the infrastructure is going to hold up under this, massive weight of everybody doing what we're doing, video conferencing and like connecting virtually and trying to social distance and not having live meetings. I think it's something that it's new to a lot of people, and I've personally had a couple conference video calls gone awry where the guy, can't figure out if his phone's on, he's trying to do it through his phone, or if the camera's on, but I've never had anything go up in fire, literally, catch on fire during a conference call. So knock on wood, that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. You get the proverbial first 5 minutes of, if you've got a conference call of any size with more than 2 or 3 people, you can guarantee that you're going to have 5 minutes of somebody kind of messing around with trying to get their system to work. And I've even seen it with like sophisticated YouTube streamers who do this like for a profession, having seeming to have some serious like technical problems and getting their systems to cooperate that day or whatever. So yeah, I guess I kind of blow past that stuff because it becomes noise that we're just used to. It's like the old conference calls. You just get used to the fact that you're on that conference call with all these people through the regular phone in business, and we kind of know the routine. We know that people aren't quite listening, or that they're pretending to listen while maybe they're doing something else on the other side, or there's funny memes and videos about that kind of stuff, but it's classic, right? I mean, it's the way it goes. And I think we'll probably come out of this period with memes and funny kind of common experiences dealing with video conferencing, I'm sure.
I sure hope so. Yeah, that's just part of who we are now. Is the little awkward, is my sound working at the beginning of every chat? Yeah.
And yes, your sound is working. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Good.
All right. Well, what's next?
All right. So let's see. We got another article here I can pull up. It's again another kind of serious one, but let's see. So we're talking about how everyone is losing all of their jobs and whatnot as a result of the coronavirus. And so I thought it'd be, I don't want to say fun is the right word, but interesting to look at another perspective on it. So this is an article from Barron's talking about how a hedge fund investor named Bill Ackman basically turned 27 million into 2.6 billion by was debatable how he did it, but it seems to me from reading the articles and from what else I've been able to find is that he essentially took a short position in the market and then went on CNBC and basically spread fear about how the market was going to react to this virus. And he was right, and it was an easy call to make, but I kind of wanted to get your guys' take on maybe the ethical side of this whole thing, and also on maybe the legislative or the regulatory side of, what seems to be like reverse pump and dumping here. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, I can say like this guy and the senators that after a very private briefing went out and then sold the majority of their stock holdings should be held accountable for some kind of, and this is just me personally, some kind of insider trading. I mean, I think that when you have, I mean, it brings into the question what is insider trading when, or what is, like market manipulation when you have a platform like CNBC, or you're privy to information that's behind closed door meetings on kind of governmental response to a crisis, how then you then make personal economic and financial decisions that benefit you based on information that the majority does not have. I would think that or a panic that you help induce would hold, would hold some kind of penalty, because it doesn't seem fair, and it doesn't seem like everybody had equal access to that information in a timely manner to be able to make those same decisions. And if that's not insider trading or producing a run on the market, I don't know what is. And that's just my personal opinion.
I agree completely. Yeah. I mean, it sounds spot on because, yeah, I can't see any other way to really view this,
Do we really know, does the article say, is there any way to actually measure this guy's contribution to the market declines?
I don't believe there's any real good way for them to correlate that, because so many things are happening that it would be difficult to link back. I mean, it seems obvious as we say it in retrospect that things that he said on national TV would induce panic, but to then take and link back that amount of panic to his, speech he gave, I think would be difficult.
Is it a timing issue? I didn't follow the detail of that. Was it a timing issue in the sense that he gives this speech, there's a sudden sharp decline, his transactions are timed, it all happens kind of within a short period of time? Is that what happened?
My understanding of what had happened is that he had set up these trades that were essentially short positions on the market. So he's basically selling stock he didn't have with the intention that he would buy it back later. And it was part of a bigger hedge. So there is a little bit more to this than we've kind of said, but that was the essence of what happened. And then after having set that financial instrument up, then went on TV and, spread fear basically. And so the timing of those events, and like AJ said, the access to information that a lot of others wouldn't have had, I think is where it starts to at least become debatable or, worth discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely do believe that people with a platform shouldn't be trading, shouldn't be both using the platform to basically influence in a way that obviously has the potential to influence the market and trading. I guess what I'm wondering about it though is, in this case, was it kind of dumb of him to even do that from the standpoint of the markets were going to go down related to the COVID-19 crisis no matter what? And so, he could have executed his short. I mean, would we have a different story here if this was just a guy who in some back room issued a bunch of short trades based on believing that due to the COVID-19 crisis, the market was going to crash, and didn't actually go on TV and say anything about it? You still could have made a lot of money this way, right? And had you made a lot of money this way, would we be having the same discussion about him?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because I do want to highlight like the difference between what's just a wise financial move and what is potentially an ethical one. So, I mean, if you're just taking a stance and you don't have any influence over what happens in the market, and you believe something's going to happen and then you set up a transaction that reflects that, I don't think there's anything wrong in that. That's part of why we have those type of financial instruments. I think that, yeah, it's the ability to influence it. It's the access to information that wasn't public. I think those are the things that start to make it more questionable than just a wise trade, or even not even just a wise trade, but also I think inherently betting against the market isn't necessarily bad. In other words, I don't think all short positions are bad. I think that, yeah, it's a difference in how you get there, what you had access to, and then what role you played in it. Not you, but Bill Ackman.
What strikes me about short positions is that is that when you think about the PR of anything, is it's always easier to influence people negatively, like to say bad things about something or somebody and have that go viral or have people believe in it than it is to say good things about something or somebody and get people to believe in it, right? I mean, my cynical take on human nature is that collectively as society we jump on to bad news and to bad things quicker and in higher volume than we do to good things. And so yeah, I think if you're inclined to be taking short positions and then making negative comments about the market, you're much more likely to get wrapped up in this kind of problem, it seems like.
Well, and I think the biggest sham is when senators have positions in stock and then they are privy to what's about to be law and or privy to information that is not available to the general public. And that's probably the story that I'm most upset about and isn't covered in this story, but about there is no insider trading laws based in Congress. So if Boeing is about to get a huge aerospace contract with the U.S. Air Force, anybody in the committee that knows that is completely within the law to be able to buy stock in Boeing before that's made public. For whatever reason, there is a moratorium or some kind of, deal that's struck that senators are allowed to do that. The same thing happened just recently with some senators that were briefed on COVID-19 and then went and sold the majority of their stocks before the market really got bad. And the market then dropped again another, 10,000 points or whatever the next day. And they were able to actually save their savings, but the general public wasn't allowed to that. I think that's even more egregious than what this guy did, where he's trying to pump his own short. But both are despicable, I think. And I think to Ty's point, you're right, trying to pump up something. And there's stringent laws about that. I think 50 Cent got in trouble 10 years ago when he was trying to pump penny stocks to his Twitter followers, and
Right.
He didn't disclose that he was invested in it. So I think the same thing goes true on a short. You should have to make aware that you're invested in a short if you're going on and saying this is going to be horrible, sell your stock now, get into cash and gold, or whatever he was saying to promote fear. And then that you have some kind of financial stake in the fact that will affect your portfolio. The same way you have to make a stake that if you're invested in a company and you're saying something about it in public.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with your point that, yeah, government officials, elected officials or appointed officials or otherwise, that they have, that is definitely like inside information that they know something the general public doesn't know. And then they trade on that seems totally unfair and antithetical to the way market participants should be allowed to behave. Yeah, that's definitely an unfortunate scandal in this situation.
All right, piggybacking off of this, another piece of beware of, there's another round of scams going around for coronavirus. So Zach Freeman from Forbes read an article kind of laying out 5 scams that are happening right now and kind of how to protect yourself or how to identify if they are scams if you're being approached by it. Some of these relate to businesses and some of these relate to personal ones. So we'll take a look at them really quick. There's fake mask being sold. So this works where there's a website, like a quick pop-up website that's selling protective masks, and they SEO the website to be on the list, and it sells mask, and then the company and the website disappears and you never receive your mask. There's scams about fake vaccines. Currently, there's no vaccine for the coronavirus, so if you get an email or a phishing scam looking for fake, claiming they have a vaccine for the coronavirus, it is not. There's also financial relief. Now, this is the one, and the fake charities. These are the ones I kind of want to focus on because there has been targeted at, I've seen targeted ads for businesses and for individuals offering financial relief from the coronavirus, or waiving the collection of student loan debt and all that. And as of, I think, probably today, there was no kind of CARE Act pass or stimulus package pass that would have been in here. So they wouldn't have, these scammers are tricking consumers into believing that they have to pay a fee to receive financial support, which you should never pay a fee to provide financial support. And the other part is fake charities. We work with some nonprofits that are pretty hit hard by these, by the corona outbreak. But there's charities, fake charities that are going around for financial support for coronavirus. And the last one that we mentioned before is the student loan forgiveness. There's been things on the table for student loans, but nothing has been enacted as of right now to help out with student loan forgiveness. I know that they've thought about deferring it, and we may have an update on the next podcast, but I haven't read anything currently that shows student loan forgiveness as being one of it. And there has been reports of small business loan lending stalling, and that a lot of the stuff that I see on LinkedIn, there isn't a lot of lending right now for small businesses. So beware if you're contacted by somebody that's promising zero interest or a forgivable grant or loan for a small business, because that's also been running around. So unfortunately, entrepreneurial scammers are taking it up. I'd kind of like to get your guys' take on these scams, or if you guys have seen any other scams going around.
I haven't seen any scams, but I mean, it reminded me when you were talking about vaccine scams, that story of there was that couple that Trump had been talking about, President Trump had been talking about the potential of the malaria drug that could be used to treat coronavirus. And that drug, I don't remember what its name is, but it has, part of the name has something, starts with chlor something, right? So it sounds kind of like chlorine. And so there was this couple that decided that some kind of chlorine type chemical that they had for cleaning a fish tank was what President Trump must have been talking about. So they self-dosed and injured themselves severely doing this. So yeah, not a scam, just a being ridiculous. But yeah.
Medical advice from Trump.
Yes, I mean it's like, yeah. First off, they're taking medical advice from President Trump, and second of all, they're not even actually taking his proper advice. It's like a double whammy. It's like,
yep, that's a little bit of natural selection right there.
That's right.
Well, I was also reading, I think one of the Jim Baker, or one of those televangelists, was selling a cure for coronavirus on his website, and was ordered a cease and desist letter by, I think, the FDA or somebody in the government area to cease and desist selling these things. So yeah, there's a lot of, I wouldn't even call it entrepreneurial. It is just a scam, and no better than, a rich uncle in Nigeria or something. So.
And just, yeah, as a general reminder to everybody, and whenever there are times of crisis, there's always somebody trying to capitalize on it. And so just, think about every email that you get asking for your social over the next week or two before you type it in.
I got one more, a bonus, and I thought we could, this will probably be meaty. I thought we could talk about the stimulus package itself. So breaking news, I think maybe right before we jumped on the podcast today, they did end up passing Trump signed in the stimulus package, so the CARE Act. And people are probably wondering when they'll get their check or how they'll get their check. And so CNN did a pretty decent job reporting on how long it would take and how those checks would be issued. And this actually harkens back to an article we talked about on the last in-person podcast, roundtable we did, where the IRS is basically acting as a social welfare payment arm of the government. And that's the way that these individual stimulus checks will be given out, is through the IRS. And so many people are wondering how long this is going to take. And, like, yes, the bill has been signed, but CNN goes on to detail that it's probably going to take at least 4 weeks, and that's if you filed a recent tax return within, for fiscal year or your calendar year 2018 or 2019, and that the amount that you'll get is based on your tax filing. So the cap at which it starts reducing is at 75,000 per person, or I believe you get phased out then at 100,000 because it reduces the amount of the stimulus check, which is supposed to be $1,500 per person, gets phased out $100 for every $1,000 that you make, anyway, it phases out at $100,000. And so this is a quote straight from Mnuchin, who is with the White House. Our expectation is within 3 weeks we'll have direct deposits out there. And CNN is kind of countering that and saying 2 weeks from now is April 6th, and they think that's very, very unrealistic. This is from the Tax Policy Center, and it's saying it's more realistic to expect those checks in a month or two. And so I kind of wanted to get your guys' take on, how long that's going to take, maybe how the IRS is acting now as a social kind of welfare distribution, really now delivering the stimulus checks. And then also maybe if we want to talk about the phase-out amount, where they're basing this on the tax filing of the last 2 years. But if you've lost your job in the last month or so, how then they're making it very difficult for people to jump through hoops then to get that stimulus package. So I just kind of wanted to get you guys to take on the stimulus package and kind of how long it's going to take people.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that comes to mind on this is that, okay, so we just got an extension to July 15th to file our tax returns. Oh, never mind, because you got to hurry up and file your tax return now if you want to actually get this check. So so all of you who thought tax season was postponed, forget it. Game back on. We're back in it again. Get those tax returns done ASAP.
Well, especially if you're one of those small tax preparers, and there's a lot of them out there that still do personal taxes. If you thought that your work year was, 4 months or say 5 months of the year, and then, after April 15th, you take a small vacation, you come back and do your extensions, and then you're done. This really extends it out to, who knows how long it's going to go. It could go most of the year, especially with the forgivenesses that they're talking about and allowing, payments being stretched into 2021 and 2022. It could really put a burden on our tax preparer friends that are out there doing personal taxes.
Wait, so something you just said, there's an irony here in that if you actually owe tax, your incentive is to just not do the work for a while. If you actually are already paid into the system, your incentive is to actually bite the bullet and do what you have to do to file your tax return right away, right? And so, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if maybe that's just the weird way I think, but it seems like that's an odd set of incentives that kind of misaligns the way the world should work. But,
yeah, it does seem to be going counterintuitive to what you would think that they would want you to do. And yeah, just to go back to your point, AJ, on does it seem like this will take a long time? With these always take a long time. Whenever these types of events have happened, and it feels like this is even going to be worse because of all of the delays that they're experiencing and all the people who can't come to work. And so yeah, it just seems like it's safe to bet that it will be a long way down the road before anyone sees money in their checking account.
Well, probably, if the Treasury is smart about how they implement this, the way they can for sure make it work right away is for those who owe tax, make it be an offset on whatever tax they would owe, right? Because they already deferred having to pay that till July 15th. And so, that's a check that you're planning. I have some business clients that are what we call flow-through entities. So they pay taxes on their personal tax returns, and they know they'll owe tax. And that's part of the cash flow projections we're doing is we were looking at, the business will have to pay the owners cash so the owners can pay their taxes because of the flow-through mechanics of being taxed at the owner level. And And so, and so the fact that the tax is now deferred until July 15th helps everyone, helps the business because the business can conserve that cash for now. And I would say about this point is hopefully the treasurer would be smart about this and they'd say, okay, if you're entitled to some of these checks, you can use them to offset any tax you owe. That might be the quickest way somebody gets the benefit of this, is simply paying less tax that they otherwise would owe right now.
Yeah, and the other thing you mentioned, and I thought I'd bring it up, is the IRS is understaffed and has been understaffed for quite a while. Also, too, the IRS is not known traditionally to be very technically savvy. They were still doing very many things on paper as recently as 2015-ish, I think, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, I think it's putting, not only is it putting a great burden on those individual tax preparers and then having to go back to the drawing board for those financial planners, but also, too, the sheer number of checks that are going to have to go out and the manpower and technology behind what the IRS is going to have to leverage to be able to get this done. I don't know. It's quite an undertaking. Yes, the bill signed, but the time that it gets, that money gets deposited into your checking account, maybe, like the CNN article said, at best 4 weeks, at worst it could be 90 days, 3 months, so it's still very much up in the air.
Yeah, the only I guess I wouldn't call it a plus side, but the only saving grace here is that it seems like these problems are going to persist for a while. So it seems like everyone will still be very much in need of that money in 3 months or, so trying to put a spin on it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, it's like yeah, people will still want that money for sure a few months from now. They won't get to a point where they're like, never mind, just keep it.
I also thought that the phase out amount was quite frankly low. I mean, realistically, $75,000 a year may sound like a lot to a lot of people, but anymore, maybe back in the 90s, you were balling if you were making $75,000 a year. But now, I mean, especially in the Portland area, man, you need that much just to make your house payment, really. So I thought, I don't know, maybe I'd get your guys' take on the threshold amount. 5,000.
Yeah, it definitely seems kind of low. And that's one of those hard things when you try to apply a uniform threshold to a very diverse group, which in this case would be all the different states with different costs of living. Yeah, it seems like it'd be a hard thing to put to get the exact right number.
I don't know where they came up with this number, but interestingly, it matches. And I don't have the citation for this, but there is a well-known study about human happiness in the United States, and that happens to be the threshold area that what the study had said, and this was a few years ago, I think, but it said something about how if you're when they studied income related to human happiness, that once your income got to about 75,000, you had kind of reached the peak of happiness. And when they researched, when they had researched how happy people were who made more money than that, they concluded that making more money didn't have a correlation to additional happiness. And it was this idea that it was testing this question of, does money make you happy or not? And the answer that this study was trying to put forward was, it does on the lower end of the curve until you get to about 75,000. And then after that, it doesn't necessarily make you more happy just to have more money. So anyway, that study pops to my mind because I think that's close to what that threshold was in that study, is what they happen to be using here. I don't know if there is any connection there or not, but interestingly enough, yeah.
Do you remember the name of the guys that ran that study? Because I'd like to find them and tell them, give me $1 million and I'll tell you happy or not afterwards.
I don't remember the name, but maybe we can Google the income and happiness or something.
Income, happiness, diminishing returns. That would be probably what I would call that. But yeah, I mean, I can say that, just speaking from experience, some of the happiest times in my life were where I was not making as much money as, I had at other times. And so I think you look at things different when you're at a lower income level and you learn to be happy with what you have, sort of a thing. And so, yeah, it does seem like there's a pretty big disconnect between that that correlation of income and happiness.
I found it. Well, I don't know if I found the article. It's a article from Money published in November 2017. Let me see if I can do the screen share thing that we've all been doing here today. Let's see here. Here's how much money you need to be happy according to new analysis. This was November 20th, 2017. This is CNBC website. The idea that money can't buy happiness has been disproved, at least up to a point. Experts say that happiness does increase with wealth, but the correlation peaks at earning 75 a year. Hey, how about that? My memory, it peaks at earning 75,000 a year. The lower a person's annual income falls below that benchmark, unhappier, blah, blah, blah. Time report in 2010, some study from Princeton University. So anyway, I think there's been a lot of articles on this. It was a well-worn discussion topic. And yeah, I guess my only point with this, I'm not endorsing, I believe this is necessarily true. I actually think, this might be true. This makes sense to me. I'm not saying I know the issue well enough to know that that's true or that these studies are well-founded or not. I just thought it was interesting that this was a common discussion point a few years ago as that point at where happiness and it's the threshold being used for for this payment, interestingly enough.
Well, I wonder if the correlation isn't related to how you I guess the point when I think back, I think I was happier when I was making less when I was making far less money than I am now. But I'm wondering if that isn't hand in hand with age, right? Because with age comes responsibility, I think, and with Oh, you got trouble unsharing?
Yeah, I don't know how to unshare.
Go to the bottom of the screen and hit stop sharing, or at the top there should be a button that says stop sharing. Yeah, meeting controls, stop sharing.
Top, yeah.
This damn thing, talking about webcasting disasters. Here we go.
While we're waiting for him to get that pulled up, I would just like to share Daniel Tosh's thoughts on this topic, which is, have you ever seen a sad person on a jet ski? No. Anybody
Exactly.
buy you happiness has never ridden a jet ski. Because it's a lot of fun.
And no, I don't. These controls are not available to me. I don't. Oh, let me just hit the escape. All right, so yeah, we got back from my share screen dilemma, and here we are. Whoa, what happened here?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm in the garden, and Charlie's in another planet, and AJ, you're part of a
street art.
You're part of an abstract painting. It looks like
very Portland.
So we were talking about problems people are having with webcasting and with video conferencing, and yeah, we didn't expect this problem, but apparently we're also experiencing some technical difficulty here. So we're gonna sign out from here. Remind everyone to subscribe to the YouTube. Hit that notifications button, hit the like buttons, and download and share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. And we will see you guys all next time. Thank you for doing this with us. Take care now.
Smash like now. The floating invisible hand demanded.
Thanks for watching.